Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We're so glad to have you here today, all our listeners and audience around the world. We have a great guest today. He has trained and coached over 10,000, that's right, 10,000 professionals across 6 continents. And I'm guessing the only continent, and you'll share with me, I bet you haven't been to Antarctica and done any training down there. Uh, that's the only continent we're not on, have any downloads. We're on all 6 continents as well. He's helped Fortune 500 companies and nonprofits alike drive measurable results. He's the founder of Capacity to Care, a nonprofit encouraging super performers to donate their talent, not just their time, to improve outcomes in their communities. He's known for his clarity, candor, and hands-on approach, and is now bringing his best practices to readers everywhere with SuperPerformance, which I understand is also an audiobook now. Please welcome everybody, George Pesansky. George, man, glad to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be here.
Well, we're going to just dive right in. You and I've had a little bit of a chance to talk offline, and your coaching career has spanned like decades, and the transformation that you've helped people make is incredible. I'm really curious, what was the pivotal moment or challenge in your career that first planted the seed of super performance, not just general performance?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of my origin story. And I actually dedicated almost an entire chapter in the book because I think it's important for people to recognize that everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential. It's just a question of whether or not they step in and do it. I was a brand new lieutenant in the Army, and I was branched as a chemical officer because I had gotten a degree in chemistry. So that was kind of my first mistake, is getting a degree in chemistry. And through some circumstances that are kind of irrelevant, I ended up having to become a tank platoon leader, and never went to the armor school. When I actually arrived at the location where I was going to take over this platoon, was the first time I ever even saw a tank in person. Where I was actually up close. And the tank, they typically move and store the gun over the back deck. So I actually thought that was the direction the tank went. So all the soldiers are like, okay, here's our new leader. This is great. It was by far the most difficult situation I had dealt with to that moment. I didn't know anything about what I was responsible for. I was responsible for the lives and the equipment of these soldiers. And I knew that I could provide some great leadership, but I was going to depend on them to show me how everything worked. And super performance is about rising to your full potential. So I rose to my potential as a leader, trying to really empower and engage that entire group, gain their confidence and support. And they rose to their full potential in really, kind of exceeding what they believed were the levels of performance they were capable of. And, in these units, you have competitions and things. And my tank and my platoon ended up winning all of the gunnery contests that year. And it was against all of the West Point guys and all the other folks that really counted us out as being, kind of a ridiculous exercise of having this guy run this platoon. And it really just proved to me that anything is possible. And if you have people who are willing to engage, then you can take advantage of helping them reach their full potential. And if you're willing to engage yourself, then there's really nothing you can't do if you put your mind to it. And that was kind of my origin of what super performance might look like.
Wow. So it reminds you, what was that movie with the kids? The baseball, Little Giants. Everybody counted. I think that
Bad News Bears.
Absolutely. Bad News Bears. That's what it was. Little Giants was a different movie. So you're a 20-something second lieutenant.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, were you like the youngest guy in your platoon, or
Well, no, there were some, brand new privates who were,
okay?
out of high school, showing up off the bus, but and they were not the ones that really you had to worry about. The tough crew is your platoon sergeant, and then each one of those tanks has a tank commander who's typically an E6 or an E7, and these guys have decades of experience, and they've
Yeah,
spent their entire career mastering their craft. And now, this butter bar who showed up, who's not even been in a tank before, is now in charge. And yeah, it's a tough moment, but the way I handled it was being honest and telling them that I don't know any of the tactical things, and I don't know any of the technical things, but I do know how I can help people be their best selves. And I guarantee you won't work harder than me, and you won't be more
yeah.
open-minded than me, but you're going to learn a lot from me, and I'm going to learn way more from you. And we got started.
Wow. And I'm trying to remember who I heard this from, and it was just in the last 6 months, um, that their moment was when they realized, I know what I know what I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know, and
Yeah,
that is where the growing uh, period comes, when you acknowledge, yeah, you know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know, and that, and, that one really made me think for a while.
yeah.
What was the danger for you? Because I'm guessing you were probably raised this way, like most American young men were. Uh, the old adage, if you want it done right, do it yourself. Did you struggle with that, or was that a part of your experience in learning the super performance arena?
It was, and I think it's, you know, a mistake that all leaders make at some level. Even as we gain more experience, we still, make the mistake of messing up what our responsibilities really are. And I love thinking of things in three questions: the what, how, and why. And as a leader, you have to be able to help people understand why what we're doing is important, and why it needs to be successful, and why it matters. And you also have to be able to be clear about the outcome, the what we need to get accomplished. Where we can get ourselves in trouble is where we decide to get involved in how. And I was lucky enough to have absolute gold when it comes to the NCOs that I worked with. Two of them ended up becoming command sergeant majors, which is, if you
Wow.
think of the statistics of how, it's the equivalent of being a multi-star general, as an enlisted member. To have two of them in my platoon, end up basically becoming generals, becoming command sergeant majors. It just, to me, was a testament to them really being, somebody who reached into finding their full potential. And it was not about trying to get to tell them how things should be done. It was being able to communicate what we needed to do, why we needed to do it, and then engaging them to help us with the how. I absolutely got involved in the how early on, and I still remember, at the time, Sergeant Mabry, who it was now retired, Command Sergeant Major Mabry, grabbing me by the shoulder and saying, "Okay, you stop here. You're now dead, and let's watch and see what happens." And then just seeing chaos, because everybody was waiting for me to tell them how to do the work. So when I get involved in the how, then people wait for instructions. But when I explain why this is going to be important and what we need to get done today, and I need you to own the how, I need you to have the experience, I need you to have the knowledge, and I need you to ask if you have questions. But by no means should you be waiting for me to tell you everything you need to do. Let's focus on the outcomes, focus on the results. And that was such an amazing lesson for me. And I think it's part of the success of the model, that our military has, of decentralizing decisions and having people be accountable to the outcomes that they're given. And I think it's just a model for, corporate America and small businesses as well.
Great insights. Because as you're sharing the story, I'm just going, oh man, I remember when I was a cop and I finally made, lieutenant,
Yeah.
and it was those sergeants, or in the military, it's those NCOs that are the
Mhm.
backbone of getting things done.
Yes.
And I struggled with that. Uh, if you want it done right, do it yourself. And I finally had a lieutenant when I was a sergeant, a lieutenant commander, did my annual evaluation. And he shared with me, he goes, Pat, one of your best strengths is that you lead by example. One of the areas that you're weakest in and need work on is you lead by example. Do you understand what I'm talking about? I looked at him, I said, LT, I have no idea. And and it was one of those aha moments, kind of like the NCO grabbing you by the shoulder and telling you, hey, put the brakes on and just be patient.
Yeah.
He said to me, Pat, there's a fine line between leading by example and doing somebody else's job for them.
Yes.
And you need to let people, not, he didn't use the word fail, but you need to let people do their jobs and not count on you. Like you said, they're waiting for you to tell them how to do it. He goes, your folks know that you'll come out there and headhunt and do all these things on their beats that they should be doing. You need to let them figure out how to do it and to do it right. And that was a
Absolutely.
really tough lesson. I mean, I was well into my, oh shoot, I made sergeant. Man, I was early 40s
Wow.
when I learned that. So
Yeah.
I was a slow learner, I guess. Hey, on the super performance
Yeah.
arena, I know in your trainings and in your coaching and in the book, you talk about 8 strategies.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you kind of, give us that list of what, the generalized list of the 8 strategies, and then maybe we can talk about a couple of them a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, yeah, and they are 8 different strategies, but they're all moving toward the same outcome, which is trying to help you reach your full potential. The most important of them by far, and how all the others kind of support, is the idea that when you think about reaching your full potential, being ideal, a lot of people think about a destination that they're trying to achieve. Like
Mhm.
as you telling the story, raising up through the ranks, kind of gaining greater responsibility and growing, kind of your influence. You could start off as a young man and say, I really want to make lieutenant, and that's my goal, that's the outcome. But every day you don't, you think about, well, what's preventing me? Why am I not getting promoted, or why am I not getting to that result? A lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of teams, and most of the coaching that I've done for the last 30 years has started with the problem, started with the issue, the thing that's in my way. And in almost every case, that's never been the solution. The solution, and this is really the core of what super performance is about, is that you do a lot more right than you do wrong, and you tend not to ever think about it. So I focus on what I call the root cause of success, and recognizing, what it is that is working for you, and what I call golden hours, which is where everything is just flowing, everything is right, everything is working. And when we have those moments of zen, and we all have them both personally and professionally, we typically chalk that up to luck. We chalk that up to, well, that was just the moons aligned and everything was good. And that's not how the world works. There were conditions, there were circumstances, there were decisions, there were factors that influenced why everything went so well. And if you don't step back sometimes and ask yourself, well, why did I have this golden hour where everything was good? Then you're not going to repeat it deliberately. You're going to repeat it just randomly. And that's why a lot of people get frustrated. So for us, it's all about the golden hour, and the idea that perfection is not measured in time, that you can have a great 10 minutes, you can have a great hour, you can have a great day, And if you know what drove it, what created it, then you can have it more often. And you can also start stretching out the periods of time where everything is just really working well. And it's an infinitely easier thing to do, to focus on how do I stretch and extend the things that work for me, than trying to, get the fish to climb a tree. That fish has a huge problem. It's not ever going to solve it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's and what how do you manage, because in law enforcement, I'm in a lot of careers.
Yeah.
There are A-type high drive personalities, and some of them almost to the point that they uh, feel invincible. How do you keep people's, I don't want to say in check, but somebody, that fish that thinks he can climb that tree and it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
The reality is there's people in the workplace who have exceptional aspirations and great talent, but the reality is um, they're setting themselves up for failure because they're not being realistic. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
No, no. Yeah.
how do you in the super performance, how do you keep that like Ryan Holiday wrote, ego is the enemy, the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
How do you keep that ego in check and still be a super performer?
Well, I do think, and again, this comes from, coaching a lot of people and helping them drive change and improvement in their organizations, and um, being able to, again, really fully appreciate those factors and conditions, and also those characteristics and traits that help you be successful. I do believe there are a lot of doctors who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education and went through, a decade of, school and internships and everything they need to do. And they're miserable. They absolutely hate that job. They don't want to see patients. They don't want to deal with the hospital or the insurance companies. And they would love to do anything else other than what they chose to do. And those people exist in law enforcement, they exist in corporate America. And to your point, some are so hard about the choices we made. It's the fallacy of sunk costs, that I've invested in this so much that I'm going to continue to pursue it. I'm going to continue to ask myself, why can't I climb that tree? And I'm going to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And, the reality is, there's nothing better, there's nothing more free than being able to recognize the things that you're truly talented at, the contributions you truly have, and being able to then double down on those to help you expand and grow the career you have, or look at a different career, or look at a different role in the company that you're in. Helping people who work in operations, manufacturing, get a sales job because they just cannot stop chatting it up with everybody on the factory floor. You know,
Yeah, no, I do.
you're,
I do.
like, you're in the wrong job, but I know the job that you are perfect for, right? You're going to
Yeah.
love it. We're going to give you a car and everything, get out there and do that. But this idea of, like, why can't this work? And why can't that work? Well, think about what you're great at. Think about those moments where everything is working for you. And then ask yourself, do we need to make change to be able to find ourselves in the places where we can have that maximum benefit? I don't want to be a fish trying to climb the tree. I want to be a fish that is finding a better pond, right?
Right. And, and that kind of takes us into, from a supervisor's responsibility or perspective, or even, a chief operating officer, or
Yeah.
people that are in those senior executive positions, that we're still doing the same things the same way and expecting different results, which we all know is the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
In this performance arena, I don't think there's a job out there that doesn't have a performance evaluation,
Oh, no. Yeah.
a system or whatever.
Yeah.
How, what are your thoughts on, are those performance reviews, are they relics of the past? Is there something we should be doing to make them more, um, more efficient and effective, so that we can identify that we have the right people in the right seats, and we may have a right person, and they're in the wrong seat, and we're afraid to go, hey, I think you'd serve our company or our community better if we move, but we're afraid to have those conversations, I think, as executives. So what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah, no, I find it so interesting because I do sometimes get involved in this process with companies. If you think about the hiring process, when you bring in a new candidate, when you're screening candidates, interviewing candidates, what are you talking about? You're talking about all the good things. Like, why is this candidate a good fit? Why are they gonna, do great in my company? Why? So in the onboarding, kind of let's get you into the company, it's all about your success and the things that make you successful and how good of a fit you are. And then as soon as you're in the company, to your point, that first annual review, what do we talk about?
Yeah.
All the things you didn't do well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That you did. Yeah. You didn't meet this quota. You didn't do that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like the script completely flips. And I do believe that there's a huge opportunity in any organization's culture to fix this problem, to kind of correct it. I actually have a name for it. It's one of the 8 things that we talk about, one of the 8 strategies in the book. It's called the prison of expectations. And what ends up happening is when you set a goal and say there's a quota, for example, that we have to reach, and I need you to hit 80, and if you don't hit 80, there's going to be trouble, right? We're going to have a talk. We're going to have to consider a different territory. It's really, really critical to hit 80. So if that's a metric that is really stressful, really difficult for me, and I figure out that I could hit 90, I have a choice to make, don't I?
Yeah.
Because what happens if I hit 90?
Then you got to hit 95 next year.
Exactly. Exactly. That is the prison of expectations. So if you think about it from the owner's perspective, from the senior manager's perspective, the people who are investing their money in this business, they want you to hit 100.
Yep.
They want you to hit 95. But the reality is that we've created a system where we've encouraged people to not do any better than the bare minimum, because if they did, then we're going to have to continue to do it that way. And I call that the prison of expectations. And you can break free of that. You can break free as an individual. You can break free as an organization by recognizing that we really just have to measure what we learned from the mistake or the failure. And we have to understand the root cause of our success. So that performance review process should really look a lot more like what was the limiting factor? What was the deviation? What was the issue that slowed or stopped my progress? And I want to measure how well you know what that is. And I also want to measure how well you know how you got to 95 and how you could do it again. Because as an owner, as an investor, if I've got that sales professional or that person reaching that quota, and I'm super confident they know what got in their way, and I'm super confident they know how they got to that level, what else do I really want? Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh man, we had this conversation, offline, where I told you that
Yeah.
that our podcast is very conversational. It's not scripted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm like the dog that sees a squirrel, and and you say something, and that's the squirrel, and I go, man, that reminds me of,
Yeah.
and what you're talking about triggered a whole bunch of rapid thoughts. One of which I remember watching a Blue Angels documentary where they're all sitting around the table, and they were being followed. They were getting ready to do an air show, and their after action meeting report, what they start off before they ever even fly the show. They're sitting in a conference room, and they're sitting in the order of the plane that they're in, 1 through 6.
Mhm.
And they do the whole air show from the time that they get into the cockpit and fire up the engines. They verbalize, and they're closing their eyes and visualizing and doing the whole air show as if they were actually out there doing it right now. Then they go out and do the air show, and then they come back, and that after action review, if you will, performance
Mhm.
review, is not by number one. It's by each individual pilot, and they're asked basically, what'd you do well? What could you have done better? And you're kind of your three questions, what, how, and why.
Yeah.
And then and nobody else gets to critique them. They critique themselves, and then they end it with, "I'm honored to be a part of this team." And that whole unit integrity and morale and expectations is you join this team. This is what's going to be expected of you. Part of it is that self-awareness and self-evaluation. And I tell when I'm training command officer development across the country, one of the things I talk about, because we talk about organizational discipline, and
Right.
because everybody, that's you
Yeah.
you get the lawyers involved, and all that kind of stuff, and it's all
Yeah.
you only see your boss when you screwed up,
Yeah.
type deal. And we think of discipline as punishment, when in reality, the root word for discipline, uh, it's in Latin. I don't speak Latin, but for the lack of a better way of saying it, it's disciple,
Mhm.
and that means to train or teach, not to punish.
Yeah.
And so some of the things you were saying is, I tell these command people, when you're an entry level cop, and it could be an entry level corporate job, I don't care if it's at McDonald's,
Yep.
that you're entry level. One of the, we ask the question, why do you want to be a police officer? Which is a stupid question because they're all going to say the same thing. We all said the same thing. We want to give back to the community. We want to protect and serve. I get that. That's your idealism. Really, why do you want to be a police officer? And it stuns them. So I say, ask them this question: is what is the ultimate job you want to get on this department?
Yeah.
And, and if they go police chief or K9 unit or SWAT team or school resource officer, or it's an entry level kid, 15 years old at McDonald's, what's your dream job? Well, eventually one day I'd like to own my own store.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they're giving you insight into that. They've given this job some thought. They're forward thinking. They're not just, paycheck to paycheck kind of mindset. And then ask them, well, what would prevent you from achieving that job? And if they go, well, I need to get a college degree. I want to be an commissioned officer.
Yeah.
Well, what's preventing you from doing that? Education. Because they're an 18-year-old enlisting,
Yeah.
even did delayed entry and all that. And
Right.
and someday, I want to be a general.
Yeah.
And that's how. And if we have that kind of expectation at the entry level of how we're going to treat our people, we're also learning what they desire, what they want, and what they believe they can do.
Well, and I love what you're saying, and it so aligns with, so much I've written about and what I try to do in my coaching as well, because it really is about enabling those resources. So if we go back to that root cause of success, the leader knowing kind of what that 18-year-old kid working in McDonald's is doing and kind of why they'd like to become a police officer, no question. I need to understand like what that vision is for, what that person sees.
Mhm.
But if I'm, 10, 15, 20 years on the job and I see how quick this kid is, how athletic he is, then that becomes my opportunity to recognize the root cause of his success and to start to see the potential. And
Mhm.
if he says, you know what, I love typing on a computer. I just want to sit here and I just want to, kind of
Yeah.
do the administrative. It's, let me send you to the SWAT team for a week. Let me get you out on the field. Let me, let you go run some laps around those guys because you're such an athlete. That moment, I think we can all think of those moments where you realize you're really good at something, and that completely changes what you even want to do, right? When you realize, hey, I'm really good at this, and
Yeah.
I can do it, and that for me, my tank platoon, I'm like, you know what? I'm really good at turning a situation around, making lemons out of making lemonade out of
Right.
lemons. Now, if I didn't have that chance, who knows, right? But
Yeah.
if you know that this is something you're really good at, and then you start to gravitate toward it, or better yet, you have leaders who help kind of steer and help you recognize, help you see what those root causes of success are in you and encourage that opportunity. I don't know how many people, I wouldn't even be able to count, that I think have kind of changed careers or kind of altered their paths and are doing things they never thought they would do, just based on that discovery of things that they're really, really good at.
Oh, you're looking at one of them. Yeah, I was, and I shared this with you. I went to law school because everybody goes, "Hey, you'll be a great lawyer," and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. And after 4 years of practicing law, and I was a prosecutor, so I wasn't
yeah,
on the dark side kind of deal.
yeah,
I hated it.
yeah,
It was not. It was not what my vocation or calling.
yeah,
And I think for a lot of people and a lot of our listeners, and the audience are very faith based, and they understand that scripture, from Jeremiah, where it says, "I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb," which means I loved you. The word "knew" in the translation means I
mhm,
loved you before you were ever even formed in your mother's womb, and I consecrated you before you were born. And that means that a calling, a vocation, that God knows the gifts and skills that you have,
yes,
and that you will develop, and that if you ignore that, then yeah, you're going to be in a career that's miserable. You're going to be in a marriage that's miserable. All sorts of things because you deliberately ignored that journey and searching of what are my gifts and talents. And all you got to do is ask, and it can include asking other people.
oh,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And one of the, and you were talking about earlier. You were talking about life outcomes and the bigger picture. And one of the things I share with people is this challenge is take out a piece of paper and write down the one sentence you want people to say about you at your funeral.
oh,
And I call it a life sentence.
yeah,
And and whatever it is, it can change. Eh, But if if you write that down, what do you want people to say about you at your life sentence? That gives you kind of the starting point of now doing that self-assessment of what am I doing right and what am I
it does.
doing wrong that's not living out that life sentence. And
Yeah,
and it gives you encouragement because you're not on the lazy river ride, just
yes,
floating through life, waiting to see what's going to happen. You're living with intention, and I think and some of your other super performance strategies share that kind of focused vision.
yes,
Uh, and so, but here's one of the biggest things I think we fall for is that we don't know our definition of success. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know
yeah,
that you have some ideas of what the real definition of success are
yeah.
compared to the lies that we've been told.
Yeah, well, yes, for sure. And there's a famous quote from most people attribute Peter Drucker is you can't improve what you can't measure. And I've added to that you can't sustain what you can't explain. So if you don't have a clear and specific definition of that life sentence, of what it is that I am or what it is I've accomplished or who I really, can say, then you're probably not measuring yourself in the way that you should be focusing. We sometimes think of our salary as a measure of success. How much money did you make? I don't know anybody who's reached the end of their life who said, you know what, I wish I would have made more money. You know, nobody says that. And it's easy to think about it when you don't have it, and it's easy to focus on it in your younger days. But for anybody out there, I promise it's not the end answer. it is going to be that life sentence that you described, and having really clear metric of what that is. Being a good father, being a good mother, being there in your community, being somebody that people would depend on. The very end of the book, and actually I'll kind of give away the very ending. There is, and it's not my quote, but I love it, and lots of different motivational speakers have used it. But it kind of comes down to, if you were trapped in a foreign prison and you could only make one phone call, who would you call? And that is a little bit like your life sentence.
Yeah.
That, okay, this is a really bad situation. And like for me, I wouldn't call my lawyer because he's not that good a friend, and I'm not sure he'd figure out, like, he's a great guy, but he's not like my closest friend. But I do know a guy, and I know once he knew I was in trouble, don't get in his way. Like, he's going to figure it out,
Yeah.
and that would be my phone call. And I call that having utility, that you have that ability to get stuff done, to live up to that potential and be there, show up for people and follow through and make it happen. So my whole thing, a little bit like your life sentence, is, if you really want to measure yourself, ask yourself how many people are going to call you.
Wow. That's great. Man, I'm telling you, I've been struggling of what title I was going to give this episode.
Yeah.
And man, I have written so many things down. And I'm going to have to get your input on what should we title this episode? Because there's so many just great gems in here, that I'm stuck. And normally I'm not at a loss for words.
Thank you.
I know in the book you talk about sustainable momentum.
Yes.
Just want to, what are some early warning signs for leaders, whether it's, they're positional leaders, or they're the unofficial, recognized leader of a group, that they should be looking for to see that the momentum of an individual or a team or a unit is starting to wane. So, and it's how can they identify that before it becomes an emergency or a problem kind of thing?
Yeah. So there's a specific technique I share in the book, and it comes from Toyota, from this sort of lean manufacturing thinking. It's a kind of a complex manufacturing way of looking at the way you manufacture goods or the way material flows. There's some absolute gems in that way of thinking, and one of those is this concept called a target condition. And a target condition, if the easiest way to kind of think of it as an analogy is, you went to law school, and being able to practice law was the goal for going to law school. I don't think you went because you wanted to meet friendly people. You wanted to get a law degree and practice law, right?
Right.
So from the day that you made the decision to do that, you didn't start imagining standing in the courtroom and kind of arguing for the prosecution. That's not what's going to get you through those 4 years. Becoming a lawyer, becoming a police officer, really achieving any of those big outcomes is a series of small wins. You had to apply and be accepted at a law school. And then once you were accepted, you had to take your first semester, your first classes. And I'm sure that was, kind of initially challenging the first time you're sitting in a classroom again, right? Like, we got to get through this and learn how this pattern works. And then there probably was some class, some exam, something that was kind of the pinnacle moment. It was, once I got past this, it was kind of all easy. It was all downhill from here. What you find over and over and over again is, if you ask people what is their goal and they say it's, I want to become a lawyer. Okay, that's good. If I ask you what's your target condition, that means, what are you focusing on? What's the barrier that's in front of you right now? What is the thing that I need to figure out how to overcome? How do I need to succeed? How I need to sort of survive? And I need it to be short term. I need it to be the class that I'm currently in and the exam that I'm going to take. That tells you that they're engaged in the problem. And over and over and over again, I work with corporate teams And those leaders on the corporate team will say, this is my project. I'm going to improve the downtime on this piece of equipment. Okay, great. You're going to law school, but what are you working on now? What is the target condition now? And then that long pause on the phone tells me they ain't working on nothing.
Yeah.
They're imagining this big project and they're imagining all the things they got to do. And they probably are doing a little bit of everything, you know, because I'm doing work, but I'm not making progress on any one thing. I'm doing a little of this, a little of this, and a little of this, kind of like I do my gardening on the weekend. You know, I don't make any progress. I just stay busy all day. But if I had a target condition and said, look, my goal is to get the flower bed planted, and I'm going to stay focused on that piece instead of running around and trying to do a little bit of everything in the whole yard, I actually will make progress. You know, people say, well, we're 10% better. Well, if I clean up 10% of everything in my yard and I say to my wife, look at how much work I did, she's going to look at it and say, you haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Because I can't even tell that your whole yard is 10% better. But if I make 100% of the flower bed beautiful, and then I move on to the next thing, and then I move on to the next thing, and I keep having these target conditions, that is sustainable momentum because I know my focus. In the book, I tell the story of being in basic training and a particular drill sergeant who just got after me constantly because I was a cadet. I was, you know, a target. So he would just constantly say, I'm not moving with purpose. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not moving with purpose? You know, but now I understand it. Like I was just moving to look like I was busy.
Yeah.
I didn't have a destination. I didn't have a reason to be there. I was just trying not to get yelled at. And so many people just like live their lives where they're just looking busy. So
Alan, man, this another squirrel just ran by. This triggers. I'd love to get your insights. So,
yeah,
what if you're in an organization where you have a leadership team, or even just the top dog, and I'll make it a police chief because that's where my experience comes from.
Yeah.
Is that they're at your organization because they're using you as a stepping stone to get to a bigger department or a better department, and or whatever, or they don't have the skill sets and shouldn't be the chief in the first place. And you recognize, hey, in 2 years they're not going to be here anymore because the union's going to lose their mind, and there's going to be a vote of no confidence, or all those kinds of things, that there is no momentum consistency at the executive level. And so that mid-level to the front line just hunker down and ignore this guy long enough, or this team long enough. And I don't know in the military how often commissioned officers are rotated to new assignments. But if you get one you don't like, or isn't good, or is toxic, and all those negative things, how do you help sustain the momentum of those worker bees and those NCOs, the middle management, to not lose their momentum because of the toxicity or whatever at the top?
Oh,
That's a really long question.
No, I totally get it. And I'll tell you, I live it like every day. So it starts off, and it's the hardest thing to do. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do, is to recognize that the premise of the question starts with the idea that there's only one pie, and that if you get a bigger slice, I get a smaller slice. It's kind of starting off that way, because what we're saying is that this more senior person is there because they're using it as a stepping stone, or maybe it's a condition where they may not have earned it, or there's a perception they've not earned it, and now they have it. And because they have it, I don't have it. That their pie is bigger, my pie is smaller. And I think, especially when it comes to my concept of super performance, I really truly feel, and I've worked in so many organizations, that the actual leadership in organizations is rarely the person who has the title.
Yeah.
It's just rarely that way. And almost everyone in the organization knows it also. And I don't know, would you rather be the person who has the title and everybody kind of knows that you're not really the one that has the respect? You're not really the one who's creating the systems, the one who's really owning and developing the people? Or would you be the person of influence, regardless of what your title is, that is developing people, filtering out the BS so that it doesn't bother or hurt them, making sure that they're able to reach their potential, that they're staying safe, that they're doing everything they need to do? For me, it's really clear what person I want to be. And
Yeah.
title doesn't mean a thing to me. But that ability to lead and be a person of influence and to be able to support and help the people around me, nobody can take that away from me. Doesn't matter what title I have. I can go work at that McDonald's job you were talking about and be that person at that store and help all of the other folks around me and help give feedback on how we can do things better and help encourage good attitudes when people have bad attitudes. And I can absolutely start to lead that organization and not be the manager. And I think as soon as you embrace the idea that you can be that person, you can be that super performer, and you can own that, and that can be your life sentence, that you were there for everyone. You were the phone call for everyone in this room. That's a life well lived.
Wow. All right, my last squirrel. As you're sharing that story, seriously, it's my last squirrel. The first thing when you talk about being that person that equips your people and is not trying to do it all themselves and has the genuine respect and all those things. Here's the first thing that came to mind is the reading, the gospel reading where Christ commissions the 72 disciples to go out 2 by 2, and instead of him doing it, I need to go to all these places. No, I'm equipping, and he didn't send them out until they were equipped, and he also told them not to take anything, to trust, and he gave them instructions of how to conduct themselves while they were out doing their job, which was to evangelize. And he didn't he didn't sneak out and check up on them or, any of that kind of stuff. And they all came back and were excited and sharing all the great things that happened as a result of being equipped to go out for that calling. And I kind of see the same what you're sharing. You could be that person that equips your people, whether you're COO or CF, it doesn't matter, is help equip others. I think of Mother Teresa, now St. Teresa of Calcutta, how she equipped all the nuns from the Sisters of Charity, and the incredible influence and impact that they've had around the world from one person. And the most humble person in my lifetime. Wow.
It's letting go of the idea that success is that title, or success is that job, or success is this recognition, in the newspaper or whatever that is, because it's actually kind of fake. If you get that and you earned it, because you are that person and you have been there for people and the organization and the people around you have elevated you, then that's great, because you got there because you earned it. But I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've talked with folks that have, kind of that coldness in their heart because of something they think has been taken away from them. And I try to explain it's a favor. There's nothing stopping you from doing everything you want to do except you. Because you think that somebody took it away from you. They didn't. Go help that person be successful, and everyone's going to know who helped them.
Yeah. And it's sometimes when somebody has hurt you, we did an episode on it. It's called Let Judas Walk. We're all going to have a Judas in our life that's going to stab us in the back. And we know that. And you just have to let them walk. You know what? It did not stop Christ. It did not stop the other 11 apostles. So sometimes that toxic person in the workplace, And I'm not saying you have to tolerate them. From a business standpoint, if you have a toxic employee or a toxic boss, and those kind of, hostile work environment, you have to deal with that, but you have to deal with it properly. And I teach a whole class on that, by the way. You don't ignore it, because if one of my favorite sayings, if you turn a blind eye to a problem, you'll eventually be blind in both eyes. So what you're sharing, and what I'm, the squirrels that I'm chasing all over the place, is this whole idea of that you can have um, uh, great success, whether anybody else. Here's what I firmly believe: a person's opinion of you when it comes to success is they're saying what your value to them is. Oh, that person's successful. I want to be their friend. I want to be like
Yeah.
Mike, Michael
Yeah.
Jordan. I want to be, it's your value to them, when in reality, your success is uh, how you've used your talents and time that God has gifted you with, and you do it because it's the right thing to do. It has
Yeah.
absolutely nothing with any type of uh, reward to yourself.
Exactly. It's that's what I call utility.
Yeah,
It's the person you're going to make that phone call if you're stuck in that foreign prison, and you're not making that phone call because they're rich. You're not making that phone call because they have a certain title, or that they have a certain education, or they went to a certain school. You're never going to make that decision because of any of those things. What's going through your mind right now is, who's going to get it done? Who's going to be there for me? Who's going to figure it out? Who's going to have a network that they've developed because they're a person who helps the people around them, right? That's a person of utility. And to me, that's what a super performer is.
yeah. And it's kind of funny. You said, who are you going to call if you're in a foreign prison? I'm exact same position. I know the one person I'm going to call that's going to get me out, because they've already done it
Yeah.
in the past. And
Yeah.
yeah, that one, I'm going to call that one person.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
man, what a great conversation.
Oh, so much fun.
I want to kind of wrap it up with how can people, besides getting your book and stuff like
Yeah.
that, how do people actually reach out to you and go, hey, you've coached 10,000 other people. I want to be 10,001.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, two ways you can get to me. All of the social media channels, of course, we're on, but I have a personal website where we'll have this podcast, as well as all the other podcasts I've done, all the articles I write. We write a lot of content published in lots of places. I had a recent piece on Fortune.com. And of course, we have the book, audiobook, Kindle, all those things at georgepesansky.com. So just like you see my name,
Yeah.
georgepesansky.com. And also my company is myblendedlearning.com. So if you're an individual and you'd like to talk, you'd like to discuss the book, you have questions, I actually love engaging with my audience, my readers. And, so if there are things that you'd like to talk about, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're an organization and you'd like to have me speak, you'd like to hear more about our programs or the way we do things, then yeah, myblendedlearning.com. You can reach us there and we'd be happy to help you.
Awesome. And for our listeners, it'll be in the transcript notes and everything for the podcast if you didn't get a chance to write it down. George, any last parting, like, words of wisdom, or I missed something, I didn't ask a question you wanted
Yeah.
to answer, kind of deal? Open mic, if you got
Oh,
any.
yeah. No. Well, thank you again for the time. My favorite thing to think about is, if you know why you were good today and you can practice that, you'll always be better tomorrow.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna wrap this up, but
Yeah.
don't you go anywhere, because I'm serious. I need to talk to you about, hey, what do we title this episode? Because there's
Sure.
so many gems in there. And
Okay.
for our listeners, thank you so much for uh, tuning in and downloading. It's because of you. I was checking this morning. we're well over 5,000 downloads in 30 countries on 6 continents in less than a year. And it's all because of you and your desire to strive to always do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. And that's what a warrior servant leader does every day, every time. So thank you. Love you all, and see you next week.